When I opened the door to water the plants, my husband, the man who vanished 20 years ago, looked me straight in the eye and said, "You still owe me, Rose." The words hit me like a bucket of ice water right in the chest. The watering can slipped from my hand, splashing my slippers. The smell of damp soil and jasmine hung heavy in the air. He was exactly as I remembered, just older, leaner, the same arrogant tilt of the head. Only his eyes had changed. Harder. Hungrier. He handed me a thick brown envelope, his wedding ring glinting like mockery. "It's all in there," he said, voice smooth as oil. "You'll see I've been fair." I didn't even realize I was trembling until water dripped from my fingers onto the floor. I opened it after he left. Inside, a legal claim demanding $68,412 for shared marital assets. A note in his handwriting: "You built your life with my money. Time to pay it back." 20 years gone. Not a call, not a letter. And now he shows up to send me a bill. My mind couldn't process it. I sat on the couch, clutching the papers, the room spinning. The clock ticked louder than my heartbeat. 20 years, and he remembers the numbers. Thomas always said money was love. I believed him, until I realized he only loved what I gave. Example 1. When we got married, he promised to start a delivery business. I gave him $14,000 from my small inheritance, every cent my father left me. The business folded in 6 months. He blamed the economy. I blamed myself for not believing in him enough. Example 2. His mother got sick. He said, "She's our responsibility, Rose." I paid $6,200 in hospital bills while he bought a new truck for work. Example 3. Every month, he withdrew $1,500 from our joint account for travel. I later learned he was traveling to see someone else. Example 4. He once convinced me to sell my father's antique watch, $3,800 for roof repairs. The roof never got fixed. The next week, I saw him wearing a gold bracelet. Example 5. 2 months before he vanished, he begged for one last loan, $20,000 in my name. He said, "It's for us. You'll thank me when it pays off." The loan company still thanked me for the next 7 years. He never paid a cent. Total, $68,000. The exact number in his envelope. He hadn't forgotten a thing, not because he cared, but because he'd been keeping score. It was a Tuesday, April 19th, 2005. He kissed me on the cheek, said, "Atlanta's got a new opportunity." A month, maybe 2. He packed one suitcase, whistled while he zipped it, and drove off in the silver Honda I'd co-signed for. He didn't even take our photo albums. Just the car, the laptop, and our joint savings. A week later, the accounts were empty. A month later, the phone disconnected. 3 months later, I got a call from an unknown number. A woman's voice said, "He's fine. Don't look for him again." Then the line went dead. The police shrugged. "Adults can leave voluntarily, ma'am." Voluntarily. Like I'd volunteered for a funeral without a body. I built a new life from ashes. I worked at the Jefferson Middle School as an accountant, $3,200 a month, every dollar stretched tight. I bought this little yellow house in 2021, $134,000, paid off with sweat, savings, and night shifts. I found comfort in small things: morning coffee, plants, the sound of rain on the roof. Every inch of my peace was earned. And now he wanted to claim it. He wanted to walk through the door and rewrite my story. He came again the next evening. No call. No invitation. He let himself in, same confidence, same entitlement. He even sat in my chair. "I could have taken this house years ago," he said. "But I wanted to give you time to enjoy it first." I remember gripping the edge of the table so hard my knuckles whitened. The tea in my cup went cold. He smiled at my silence. "See, Rose, I always knew you'd be a survivor. You just needed my push." My push. That phrase hit me like a slap. Then he reached into his jacket and tossed a folder on the table, property documents. My name. His name. Still married. He hadn't divorced me. Technically, he said, smirking, half of this is mine. The words poured out of him like poison-coated honey. We were partners. You wouldn't have made it without me. I sacrificed too, Rose. You've always been emotional about money. Every phrase, an old echo from our past arguments. It was like listening to a recording of my younger, weaker self being rehearsed back at me. My hands shook. My throat felt tight. But this time, something in me snapped. I took a breath and said, "You didn't push me, Thomas. You buried me." I dug myself out. He smirked. "You always were dramatic." I stood up. "And you always were a coward." I walked to the door, opened it, and pointed. "Get out." He didn't move. "Careful, Rose," he said quietly. "You don't want to make this ugly." I met his eyes. "It's already ugly. But it's mine." He hesitated, then left. When the door closed, I felt my knees give out. I sank to the floor, shaking. "For 20 years, I prayed he was dead," I whispered. Turns out, that would have been kinder. I sat there until dawn. The envelope still on the table. The legal threat, the memories, the fear, all piled like ghosts around me. Then I did something I'd never done before. I picked up my phone and said the words I used to fear most. "Hello, I need a lawyer." The next morning, I sat in front of a mahogany desk that smelled faintly of lemon polish and old battles. Across from me sat Mr. Raymond Haskins, a silver-haired attorney who'd seen every kind of family war. He skimmed through Thomas's envelope, then leaned back. "You never filed for divorce?" "No. I didn't have the money back then." "He's using that. Technically, he's still your husband on paper. But his claim? Weak. Especially if we prove abandonment." He tapped his pen thoughtfully. "Do you have proof he left?" I pulled out a faded receipt from 2005, a hotel bill I'd found later in our mailbox, made out to Thomas Reed, 2 guests. "Proof enough." He looked up. "Oh, plenty." Then he smiled, that small, professional smile lawyers give when they smell blood. "We'll file a counterclaim for financial abuse. You've got receipts." I slid a folder across the desk. Printouts, old ledgers, handwritten notes, every transaction I'd ever covered. His eyebrows shot up. "You tracked it all?" "Down to the penny." He chuckled softly. "Mrs. Reed, you may be my favorite client already." For the first time in years, I laughed. Just a small sound. But it was real. Later that night, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and old folders spread around me. I went through every forgotten statement, every charge, every whisper of our old life. Then I saw it, an unfamiliar name, Ava Brooks, cosigner on one of Thomas's business loans. A quick search revealed the shock. Ava wasn't a business partner. She was his new wife. They'd married in 2008. I felt my hands go cold. He had been married twice at once. He never divorced me, but he'd built a second life. A hidden bigamy. I whispered to myself, he didn't just leave me, he replaced me. But then another voice, quieter, calmer. Good. Because now he's cornered himself. I took my findings to the bank. The clerk, a woman in her 30s with soft curls, frowned as she pulled up Thomas's old records. 3 days later, there was a knock at my door. I looked through the peephole and saw her. My daughter. Red-faced, manicured nails tapping against the frame like bullets. I opened the door halfway. She pushed it open the rest of the way. "Why haven't you sent the money?" she demanded. "Do you want people to think you're broke?" There it was again, the manipulation wrapped in pride. I said quietly, "I'm not broke. I'm just done paying for people who treat me like I am." Her tone softened instantly, crocodile tears in her eyes. "Mom, please. You know how stressed I am. You're my only support." I had heard those same lines too many times to count. So I said the thing that changed everything. Then maybe it's time you learn to stand on your own feet. Her face twisted. You're unbelievable. After Dad died, I thought you'd want to help. Guess I was wrong. I closed the door. Gently. Not out of anger, but out of peace. Behind it, I heard her shouting, "You'll regret this." I whispered back to no one, "No, sweetheart. I already regretted everything before this." A week later, I got a call from an old friend, Margie, my former coworker from the insurance office. "I saw something weird," she said. "You might want to sit down." Apparently, my daughter had been telling people, our old friends, that I was losing my mind. That I'd been mismanaging funds and forgetting things. She'd even mentioned maybe filing for power of attorney just to help Mom out. That phrase hit me like a punch. Power of attorney. She wasn't just taking my money, she was planning to take my control. That night, I went through my mail, my accounts, my passwords. I found she'd been forwarding copies of my bank statements to her fiancé's email. She had my old login saved. It wasn't a mistake. It was strategy. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just emotional manipulation, it was financial abuse. The next morning, I walked into Langford and Associates, a law office downtown that smelled like coffee and printer ink. The receptionist smiled politely. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," I said, "but I have a story." An older lawyer named Mr. Langford came out. He listened. Quietly. Didn't interrupt once. When I finished, he leaned forward and said, "Mrs. Parker, what your daughter's doing fits the legal definition of coercive control and financial exploitation." He helped me draw up a protection order, lock my accounts, and prepare documents to revoke any access she might claim. When he handed me a folder labeled Personal Authority Restoration, I almost laughed. "Authority restoration," I said. "I like the sound of that." He smiled. "So do I. You'd be surprised how many mothers sit where you are thinking they're alone." For the first time, I didn't feel crazy. I felt seen. That weekend, I went to lunch with Margie and another friend, Teresa. When I told them what happened, they shared their own stories, grown children using guilt and money as weapons. We laughed, cried, compared notes. Teresa said, "You know what I did? Changed my locks." Margie nodded. "And blocked every number that made me shake." That night, I did both. Changed the locks. Blocked her number. Then poured myself a glass of wine, not out of celebration, but liberation. I looked at my reflection in the window and whispered, "You're getting your life back, piece by piece." The next morning, I went to a salon. The same one I used to take my daughter to before prom. The stylist asked what I wanted. I said, "A haircut that doesn't look like I'm waiting for permission." She smiled. "I know exactly what you mean." When she spun me around to face the mirror, I barely recognized the woman looking back. Shoulders straighter. Eyes clearer. She wasn't the woman begging for a call back. For 20 years, I survived his absence. Now, I'll survive his return. Her phone buzzes, a call from her lawyer. "Court hearing's been set, Rose." He's fighting back. Rose looks straight into the lens, calm, resolute. "Then let him fight. This time, I'm ready." The courthouse smelled of paper and fear, that dry, recycled air that carries whispers, but no comfort. I stood there in my navy dress, simple, sharp mine. Thomas sat across the aisle, smug in a charcoal suit that probably wasn't even his. He didn't look at me, not at first. But when he did, it was the same smirk from 20 years ago. The same smirk he wore when he walked out of our house with my life in his hands. The clerk called the case. Reed versus Reed, property and financial claims. The judge, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes, nodded for us to begin. My lawyer, Mr. Haskins, rose. Calm, steady, like a man who already knew how the story ended. "Your Honor," he said, "this isn't a divorce. This is a resurrection." My client's husband vanished for 20 years, lived under a false identity, committed financial fraud, and has now returned to claim the very assets she built alone. Thomas's lawyer scoffed. Your Honor, Mr. Reed merely seeks equitable distribution. My client suffered a traumatic event, leading to temporary absence. I couldn't help it. I laughed audibly. The sound startled even me. Temporary? He was gone for 2 decades. That's not absence, that's abandonment with interest. The courtroom rippled with murmurs. The judge raised an eyebrow. Proceed. Witness 1, Melissa Grant, the bank clerk who helped me. She took the stand, poised but firm. Yes, I verified Mrs. Reed's report. Mr. Reed attempted to access an account dormant for 19 years using her outdated signature. And did she authorize this access? No, ma'am. In fact, she froze it immediately. Thomas's lawyer tried to twist it. Perhaps my client believed he still had joint rights. Melissa smiled sweetly. He also signed a false address and date of birth. If that's joint rights, then I'm the Queen of England. Laughter filled the courtroom. Even the judge smirked. He turned to her fiancé on the witness stand. Mr. Keller, can you explain why you were withdrawing from Mrs. Parker's account using her password? He stammered. She gave us permission. Langford, do you have that in writing? Silence. The judge's pen stopped moving. That silence was the first crack in their wall. The next day they came armed with something new, a forged letter from me, claiming I wanted her to manage my estate. But the date was wrong. The signature misspelled my middle name. Langford slid the paper across the table. Your Honor, this is amateur forgery. The judge raised an eyebrow. And you can prove that? Langford nodded. Forensic handwriting expert on our side. When the expert testified, explaining stroke pressure and ink analysis, I felt the room tilt. For once, the truth wasn't fragile, it was scientific. 3 on each side. Her side. Her fiancé, red-faced. A friend who repeated rehearsed lines about my forgetfulness. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in years, suddenly concerned. Mine. Margie, calm and fierce, reading my texts aloud. Detective Hayes, confirming no fraud found. My family doctor, Dr. Singh, who said plainly, she's perfectly capable, just finally setting boundaries. When he said that, I saw a few jurors smile. Boundaries sounded noble in that cold room. Langford approached my daughter. Ms. Keller, you testified your mother is confused, correct? Yes. And yet you relied on her to pay for your venue, your car, your living expenses? Yes, but... He leaned in. So she was competent enough to fund your lifestyle, but not competent enough to keep her own? The courtroom went still. Even the fluorescent lights seemed to hum louder. Her face flushed. She's twisting things. She said she'd help. Langford didn't blink. Did she say forever? Silence. The judge cleared her throat. Answer the question. My daughter looked down. No. That single word was my freedom bell. As the gavel echoed for recess, my daughter turned toward me. Her mask cracked. You think you've won? Without me, you'll die alone. I felt something, pity, not anger. I'd rather be alone than owned, I said. That was my mic drop moment. On the final day, the judge asked if I wanted to make a statement. I stood. My legs trembled, but my voice didn't. Your Honor, I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because I taught my daughter that love means giving everything. And she learned that too well. I'm here to teach both of us a new lesson: love also means saying no. Every word landed like truth finally getting oxygen. When I sat down, Langford whispered, "That's how you win a case, Mrs. Parker, by telling the truth better than they tell lies." The judge's voice was steady. Petition denied. Full financial authority remains with Mrs. Parker. Additionally, the court finds evidence of attempted financial exploitation. Restitution is advised. I didn't hear the rest. My heartbeat drowned it out. Justice didn't roar, it exhaled. Outside, cameras flashed, local reporters sniffing for drama. One asked, "Do you have anything to say to your daughter?" I paused. Yes. I hope she finds a kind woman to learn from. I can't be that woman anymore. Then I walked away, heels clicking like punctuation marks on the end of a long sentence. That night, my lawyer called. "Mrs. Parker, there's talk of restitution negotiations. She may have to repay part of the money." I stared out my window at the moon. "Let her keep it," I said. "I've already been paid, in freedom." But deep down, I knew Act 4 was still waiting, the part where I learned what peace actually feels like. Mr. Reed, your claims are denied. You are hereby ordered to pay restitution of $95,000 to Mrs. Reed for fraud and emotional damages. You are also referred to the district attorney for bigamy and identity fraud. Thomas stared at the floor, hollow and gray. For the first time, he looked smaller than I remembered. As I walked out of the courtroom, reporters buzzed around. One called out, "Mrs. Reed, any comment?" I turned to the camera, smiled softly. "Yes, you can vanish from someone's life, but you can't vanish from your own truth." The camera flash froze that moment in time, my quiet victory. The next morning, I woke up to silence, not the hollow silence that used to haunt me, but a peaceful one. The kind that hums softly, like the world holding its breath. The sunlight hit the window pane, scattering gold across my kitchen table. I poured myself coffee, black, no sugar, no rush. For the first time in 20 years, I didn't flinch when I saw his name on anything. The red notebook sat in front of me, the one that once held every wound. Now, it felt lighter. I ran my hand over it, then closed it gently, whispering, "You did your job." Carolyn came by with 2 croissants and a grin. "You're famous, you know. They replayed your quote on the news, that you can vanish from someone's life, but not from your truth line." I laughed. "Guess I'm quotable now." She leaned in. "You're free now, Rose. What are you going to do?" I looked out the window, the same view I once stared through for hours waiting for him to come home. Live. Just live. For me this time. That afternoon, I drove to the small coastal spot where Thomas and I used to sit. The same cliff where he'd once told me, "You'll never survive without me." I brought the red notebook, the court letter, and an old photograph, the last one we took together before he disappeared. I watched the waves crash below, steady and relentless. Then I tore the photo in half, one deliberate rip. The wind caught it, pulling it from my fingers. "Goodbye, Thomas," I said softly. "This time, you stay gone." I tossed the notebook into the sea, not out of anger, but peace. The pages fluttered, then sank. And with them, the last 20 years. Weeks later, I got the update. Thomas had taken a plea deal, 6 months in county jail for fraud, 2 years probation for bigamy. A journalist messaged me asking for a statement. I replied with just 2 words. No comment. Because the truth didn't need my voice anymore, it was already echoing. I started teaching financial literacy workshops at the community center for women who'd been financially abused, abandoned, or manipulated. The first time I stood in front of that small crowd of women, nervous, hopeful faces, I said, "You're not crazy. You're not alone. You're not broken for believing in someone who lied. You were just kind in the wrong direction." They clapped softly, some cried. And I felt something bloom inside me, not revenge. Purpose. That night, I recorded a short video for the women who'd messaged me, the strangers who said my story gave them courage. I sat by candlelight, camera steady, heart calm. My name is Rose Reed. I'm 51 years old, and I finally learned that self-worth cannot be borrowed, begged for, or bought. It's built dollar by dollar, choice by choice, boundary by boundary. I looked straight into the lens. If someone you love ever vanishes, whether in body or in respect, don't chase them. Build yourself. They might come back one day, but by then, you'll realize they're the ones who got lost. I smiled, not the forced smile I used to wear, but a real one. So, what would you do, I asked quietly, if the ghost who broke you showed up at your door? The screen faded to black. My name is Rose Reed. I am 51 years old, and I have finally learned that self-worth cannot be purchased, it can only be protected. What would you do if the one who abandoned you came back for what you built?